Kenny from Mini Bowl Design, and today I'm up in the studio, and just for the fun of it, today I'm going to build maybe one or two stoves and show you my thought train and hopefully a couple of tricks to building a stove. So let's move the camera in and get started. Okay, let's start out. Let's say that you're a complete and total Graham weenie and you're building your first stove. So let's start out with, because we're a Graham weenie, the lightest base, Bongo original base, of course a silicone body, and the lightest top. Okay, now you've got your stove, and you look it all over, maybe you use it a few days, and you decide that a couple of things aren't the way you want it. One is you're using it on uneven ground, and it tends to be a little too tippy for you. So, quick cure for that is to take off the original base and go with an M4 base. That's nice and wide, very stable, good for uneven ground. Okay, so you use it this way for a while, and you decide that you need a little more heat. So let's say you take this top off and you go right into it and go right to a droop top with an M2 wick. And that works real well for you, except that you have these M2 wicks with a droop top. If you're using an SS remote, you have to keep the fuel level fairly high to keep this part of the wick hydrated. And it can be a problem. You can sometimes get it too high and overflow and flood the stove, and alcohol will go down the side. So in order to improve on that and still have the same heat, there's a couple of ways you can go. First way would be to go to a turbo top where the wick is inside of a cup, so it's much more forgiving to run with an SS remote. Nowhere near the problem of trying to, your height of your remote can be much more forgiving. And if you really got to flood it bad, you can see it before it gets up over this top. But say you're somewhere where you're afraid that it might flow over and start a fire, yet you can go again and go from the M4 base to either an M2 base, which gives you a little less stability, but any alcohol that runs over will go down into the pocket in this base. My preference would be Bongo Pro base because it's very wide, very forgiving. And if you want, you can put the built-in legs in it. I'm not a fan of these legs, but that gives you yet another option. Okay, say you've decided to go with this configuration. That's good. Now, when you go to put your center wick in, there's a couple of things here I can show you. Like I said, this 3 inches is a standard for width, so that when you roll it all up, it'll just be a good fit. You don't want it tight. You want it tight enough so that it offers a little friction, but you don't want it real tight. If it's real tight, it won't work correctly. Okay, if I can here's a pair of scissors. Okay, now, for this particular application, I'm going to go for, I've already got the donut wick in there, so I'm going to go for a fairly short wick. I've got it all the way down to the bottom. I can feel it's bottomed. Now I'm just going to take that, and that's pretty much all there is to that. Now, one of the tricks I was going to tell you about was when you unroll this, when you roll it back up, this is the edge here that you're rolling up. When you get to this edge and roll it around, that seam right there, line that right up with your nipple. That way you've got a little bit of an air channel, and it will work much better with the remote if you do that. You can put your donut wick in first, or I'm putting it in second here. Either way it'll work. Tuck your wick down in there and have that seam right above your nipple, and it'll give you a little bit of a vent. Okay, now when you go to put your fuel line on here, just a second, I'll grab the fuel line. That can be a little problematic because you can see the nipple is down in a trench. It's kind of hard to get at. So what I do is I wet it in my mouth and start to slide it on. And once I get it started, I take my fingertip and my fingernail and I push and use my fingernail to work it all the way forward until it's bottomed out, and then you're all set. You'll never have any trouble with that again. So that's the main process for building a stove, depending on whether you want to be a complete and total gram weenie or whether you want a very functional stove that has all the bells and whistles. To give you an idea of the difference between the two, we'll take the wick right out of both of them, take the fuel line off. Okay, this one in this configuration, which is basically a Bongo Pro, is going to weigh, you get the scales here where I can see it, 1.6 ounces. Now, if you went the gram weenie way, instead of 1.6, it would weigh 0.73. So you can either go 3/4 of an ounce or 1.5 ounces, which is basically double the weight. You can save 3/4 of an ounce by going with this, or you can add 3/4 of an ounce by going with this. It's up to you. And that's basically for today, just what I wanted to show you. There are many other options here that we haven't even touched on, but that's a good place to start. One thing I did leave out is that if you go with this one, okay, somebody asked me about the ideal stove, and this is what I told them. It was an email. Okay, if you do, let me get this squared around here. If you do put this in here like that, I didn't get that wick perfect, but there we go. Okay, now if you want to bake or low heat simmer, I can also use a simmer ring with this. So that makes it very versatile. Take the simmer ring off and you can boil and cook. If you want to hurry it up, put a longer wick in, or if you don't want to mess around with the simmer ring, you can simply pull a donut wick off and use it that way with just a center wick. And if that's too hot, you can trim the center wick down even lower to like that. You can even trim the center wick down so it just barely sticks up through there and get a very low simmer. Many options. Simmer ring is probably the easiest way to go. But that just shows you the options that you have with different wick. I'm Tinny from Mini Bull Design. Try to have a really great day and try to have some fun today. You deserve it. Bye-bye.